If the world were like a Sleep Number mattress, everything would adapt for your comfort. Because as your life changes and your body changes, Sleep Number mattresses adapt and shift to give you personalized comfort night after night. And now everything's on sale during our Memorial Day event. Save up to $1,200 on mattresses, plus free delivery when you add a base. Ends Monday. To experience a whole new world of comfort, visit a Sleep Number store or go to sleepnumber.com. Sleep Number, to a good life sleep.
Well, hello there, my friends, and welcome back. My name is Stephanie Safarian, and you're listening to episode 590 of Sustainable Minimalists. This is a listener-supported show about intentional and eco-friendly minimalist living. And on today's show, we are outlining a framework for how to best talk about climate change with others, with friends, with coworkers, with neighbors, with lawmakers, and everybody in between. Now, polls consistently show that a large majority of people are worried about climate change, but a much smaller percentage actually talk about it with friends and family. Now, let's back up. Should we even be talking about climate change on the regular? It's a conversation that's fraught with infighting and tribalism and politicization. So should we even bother? Well, the answer, of course, is yes. We need to be talking about the elephant in the room. We need to be calling it out, pointing it out, and we need to do it all the darn time. When everybody is staying quiet because they're afraid of causing friction, it creates a false impression that nobody cares. And so when you speak up, you're giving others permission to speak up also. You're normalizing the concern. You're showing the people around you that climate change is a mainstream and everyday anxiety. It's not a fringe political obsession for the radical left. So getting comfortable about talking about climate change and actually bringing it up all the darn time is, in my view, one of the most important things you can do for the climate. So put it on your list of top 5 activities and just start doing it. Now, you'd think that the big elephant in the room, the big existential threat, would be a unifying topic, but we've all been there. You bring up climate change and suddenly everybody starts looking at their toes, shuffling their feet. Maybe a couple people get defensive. Well, my guest today is here to lay out the how to talk about climate change formula for all of us so that our conversations go well. Norm Leo is a climate scientist. He has been getting people to care about climate change for going on 2 decades now. And over the years, he has perfected his formula so that conversations don't devolve into political infighting or, even worse, apathy. Norm has written a new book. It is titled, Look at It This Way, Climate Solutions Will Benefit Your Health and Wealth. The book outlines his solutions in greater detail. And Norm, I am so thrilled to garner your insight today. I need some help on this topic. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine. Just spending some time outside and taking care of the chickens.
Are buds on trees yet in Montreal?
Yes, they are. They are more than buds. We have tiny leaves, and it's so refreshing to see the leaves. I love the month of May for that reason, actually. To start the month with just the buds and finish the month with full leaves, and it's so green all around.
Nice. Spring is unparalleled, in my opinion. It doesn't get enough attention and love. Summer gets all the attention, but spring is where it's at. Why don't we start by you telling us about yourself? Who are you? What do you do? Why did you write a new book? Tell us all of it.
All right. My name is Norm Leo. I started as a high school teacher. I was a science high school teacher, and then I loved science so much, I continued studying into atmospheric science. So for those who don't know that, atmospheric science is meteorology and climatology. So you have the weather and the climate, and they're basically the same thing, except climate, you take a few steps back and you see at the average patterns. And then I was searching for a job. I'm more of a counselor, teacher type. I love to bring lots of energy in a room. So I started working in a museum called the Biosphere in Montreal. It's this huge bubble that was built in 1967, and I was working there. And even wound up becoming the head of scientific education there, training other young scientists to give presentations. So I was giving presentations there, speaking to people. And during the 20 years that have passed, I've improved the way I would speak about climate change, seeing how people would react. Sometimes it would be very neutral. Sometimes people would be disengaged or become anxious. And after so many years, I finally found the secret way, the secret path to talking about climate change.
Okay. And listeners, stay here. We're going to get to the perfect right way to talk about climate change in a minute. But I know you have a science background. You're really immersed in climate change. Obviously, it's a thing that you are working to educate others on. But in your personal life, would you say that the circles that you surround yourself with are talking about climate change on the regular? And I ask that because in my circles, nobody's talking about it unless I bring it up.
Yeah, you're the one bringing it up.
Yeah.
I understand. I'm from Quebec. So, first of all, 99.9% of our electricity comes from hydro. So, it's hydropower. And we don't really have any fossil fuels to offer. So, honestly, not much disinformation has circulated. So, I live in a society that just accepts climate change, and it's not a controversy. It's not a thing we debate. But do people talk about it? Actually, yeah. About a year and a half ago, so this would be the holidays 2024, the end of the year 2024. I don't know about Boston. Usually we have similar climates. It was a very warm winter, a very warm time of holidays. I remember rather than having snow in Montreal, we just had so much rain. It just kept raining and raining. All the days were without snow. And what were the advantages? People were going to see their loved ones without really worrying about road conditions. It was safe. People saved a lot of money on heating their houses during that time because it was warmer. And some days it was sunny and it was just like, oh, wow, let's take a walk in the park. And it felt like spring, but it was the holidays. It's not supposed to feel like that. Anyway, there was this great poll that was done to the population right after the holidays saying, what'd you think of that? Did you like the warm holidays? And 80% of the people said, yeah, lots of advantages. We really liked it. And then they polled them again. But do you have any other feelings? And 70% of the people spontaneously said, I'm also worried about climate change. It was so amazing to see that these were enjoyable conditions, but people knew instinctively that this is not what the holidays are supposed to be like. And so people notice that the climate is changing. And because I'm an environmentalist, lots of people, when they buy an electric car or they have a new compost bin in the backyard, I'm the first one they talk to. They come, Norman, I did this, I did that. Norm, look at what I did. So I become their cheerleader, basically.
I like that. And as you're talking there, Norm, I'm thinking about how much more advanced Canada is in especially the science of climate change and accepting it than America. But I live in a very liberal community. It is blue to the blue. And so nobody ever says, I don't believe in climate change or I don't accept the science of climate change. But what I do hear an awful lot of is there's nothing we can do about it. It is the way it is. And then also some sort of downplaying statement. It's not that bad. Or to your point, the weather is mild and cold weather stinks. So what's the big deal? When you hear that, or if you even hear that in lovely Canada, what do you say in those instances as a climate scientist?
First of all, obviously, lots of us, we get discouraged. It demobilizes us. And I think that's what you're noticing. And I notice it too. But that's precisely the reason why, after 20 years of talking to climate change to various audiences, I want to talk about climate change differently. And this is what I've been experimenting in the past 5 years. So the reason why people don't want to talk about it is because the talking points are always political. They're always complex, always has a negative view of the future. So people would rather talk about something else. And I totally understand that.
So you said you've changed the way you've talked about climate change. How did you used to talk about it, and what was the response?
So here's what I did during my time at the Biosphere. So in the museum, I would meet people from all around the world. Some people would come because they were business people coming on a business trip. So they would stop by the museum. Other people were family tourists. Some people were rich. Some people were students with their backpackers. So I met all kinds. And the first years, because I'm a climate scientist, I would talk about the science with so much passion, like Bill Nye. Oh, the science is so interesting. So I would explain the science in very clear terms. What are climate models? What are the causes of global warming? What is this greenhouse effect? And show the numbers and the graphs and this. And then the presentation after 30 minutes would finish and people would just say, thank you, that was a very interesting presentation, and would leave. There would be no questions. Then as time went on, we realized, there's more and more research on the future impacts of climate change. We would talk about that a bit more. And here's what happened after 30 minutes of people hearing about the impacts of climate change. There were two big reactions that really got to me. The first one was young people. While I was talking and explaining what the Earth could look like in a few decades, they were projecting themselves in the future. And I could see the anxiety grow inside them. It was tangible. I could see it. And because we gave the presentation every day, I experimented with that and saw that, gosh, this is not how I want people to feel when the presentation finishes. The whole point of a presentation on climate change is to mobilize people, get them engaged, not to create anxiety. And the other type of people, I remember one comment, better enjoy it while we can. I don't want you to say that. Or another person, my goodness, this rich man, it just showed by the way he was dressed. A rich man comes out of the hall where I was giving the presentation. So the presentation's finished and he's walking slowly with his wife and he takes her arm and he says, why don't we go on my yacht to the Arctic to see the ice before it all melts? And I'm like, I'm not talking about the impacts of climate change for people to react this way. This is not working. There would be obviously questions and it got people curious, but it's just talking about the impacts of climate change. It was not working. So the other step was to talk about the solutions. So then 30 minutes of talking about solutions, and people love that, and they would ask questions, and sometimes does this really apply to my community or not? And it was very engaging. But if we jumped into the solutions too fast, people would then ask, but why should we give ourselves the trouble of doing that? What's the point of doing it? It seems like a lot of effort. And so people didn't see the benefits and people didn't understand what the problem is in the first place. So just talking about solutions did not work either. So here comes my great revelation. After one of the presentations with the solutions, I was walking in the halls and a couple stops me and says, oh, you gave a great presentation before. I just want to know, why did you talk about the trees in the cities so much? Because who's going to pick up all the leaves in the fall? So I said, good point. But look at it this way. And that's where the title of my book comes from, by the way. So I said, but look at it this way. When we plant lots of trees in the city, we can reduce at the magnitude of 8 degrees Celsius or 14 degrees Fahrenheit the temperature in the city. So if we were forecasting very high temperatures, that actually can make a difference for lots of people not getting heat exhaustion or heat stroke and not wind up in the hospital. And for the people who do have air conditioning, it's just going to cost less air conditioning during that time. And plus, parks in cities are super beneficial. There's lots of studies that show that it decreases people having depression or anxiety, just the fact that they can walk through the trees going back home. It's also a great meeting place for the community. When we have trees next to schools, we actually see the grades of the students go up. And because parks are a meeting place, people get to know each other and it actually lowers crime. And so this woman is listening to me and hearing all of these advantages of having parks and more green in our cities. And she goes, now I get it. I'm going to tell my neighbor tomorrow. He's a city councilor. So
Wow.
That day, I realized that it's not just talking about the solutions, but talking about the benefits of the climate solutions that really get to people. And they want those solutions to be adopted.
Have you ever looked at your bank account and just closed the app? I've been there. There's a myth that you need to have a complex portfolio before you're allowed to talk to a financial planner. The whole thing can feel really darn exclusive and gated. That's why I'm so excited to introduce you to Fearless Finance, which offers on-demand financial planning for absolutely everyone. Fearless Finance is woman-owned and built on the idea that advice should be affordable and accessible. So if you're wondering, can I afford that house? Or is my 401k doing what it's supposed to be doing? They've got your back. They're fiduciaries, so they're legally bound to put your interests first. It's just real, unbiased advice from professionals. Visit Fearless Finance today. You can have an initial chat just to see if it's a fit. And when you're ready to dive in, use code SUSTAINABLE for $50 off your first meeting. That's fearlessfinance.com, promo code SUSTAINABLE. Yes. Okay. So I have some questions here. You
Sure.
have to personalize it, I think is what you're saying. You have to almost tell people what they would get out of it from saving
Exactly.
the planet. And
Exactly.
on the one hand, it's great that there is a formula or there is a path forward with regard to these conversations about climate change, because otherwise the conversations can just devolve into political infighting. Here in America, especially, the climate has been politicized, and it is one of the saddest things that could have ever happened for the environmental movement, because again, the environment is for everybody. But okay, so you're saying we need to personalize our climate change conversations and really bring to the forefront what benefits a singular person can have by taking more pro-environmental actions. Okay, that's great. But my problem with that is that it really just speaks to our innate selfishness as a species. We only care about something if it is made clear to us that we are going to benefit.
Yeah.
That's a problem, because we could make the argument that climate change is a direct response to our greediness and selfishness. We have known since 1800s what emitting copious amounts of fossil fuels into the atmosphere is doing to the atmosphere. Hint, it's warming it. We've known, but we keep doing it because, at least here in the US, shareholder capitalism rules, and companies need to show profits and short-term gains over long-term sustainability. And so that's my whole long rant on human beings are selfish. And if we're only appealing to a human's selfishness to get them to act, are we really solving the big problem at the end of the day, which is the fact that humans are selfish, self-centered, and destructive?
Okay, I feel your pain.
I'm so angry right now.
I know. About 10 years ago, that's exactly how I felt. So I know where you're coming from. And besides, that's also one of the problems with the way we were talking about climate change. We were talking about climate change as if everyone was an environmentalist, as if everyone cared about polar bears, as if everyone cared about the coral reefs and the animals and the caribou that might disappear and stuff like that. So that didn't work. I remember asking a psychologist, what's the proportion of the people in the population who are altruistic? There's all kinds of personality tests, and what would be the natural proportion of a population being altruistic? He said, right off the bat, he said, no more than 10%.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was a light bulb moment for me. Because there was so much effort in the environmental movement to say we should push this altruism forward. And I do agree that there must be other societies before, in time, or other places in the world, that number might be higher. Or it would be more socially acceptable to be community oriented or socially oriented. I won't dispute that. But right now, in North America, we won't gain more than 10% of the people by trying to convince them to become altruistic. It's not in our nature and it's not in our culture. So that's why it's been really important for me to change the way to talk about climate change. And besides, for the past 30 years, the way we've presented climate change to people has been the same way. It's been, we're in trouble. The future is bleak because of what we're doing. We need to sacrifice. And in a society based on capitalism, that just doesn't work for the messaging. It just doesn't reach people where they are. So that's why I think talking about the benefits is right now the best way to convince people. And also it gets away from a false debate about the science or a false debate about, oh, you're exaggerating the consequences. It's alarmist. No, we start focusing on what the solutions are and what the benefits would be for our families, for our communities.
Yeah. So I'm just going to give some examples of flipping the script, and I'm hoping you can jump in with some examples as well for listeners who are like, all right, I'm on board. If it's either appeal to the selfishness and maybe turn the tide on this existential threat, or not turn the tide on this existential threat and humanity's doomed, I guess we'll appeal to selfishness. So for the people who are on board with leading with the benefits, I would say a great example could be, so you don't know this, Norm, but I work for an environmental nonprofit. I tend to message my writing as opposed to, oh, but the water is polluted and the fish are dying and there are microplastics in the water and the manatees are suffering. Instead of talking about what the water quality is, a reframe would be, more polluted water means dirtier water for your family to drink. That's the frame. Or dirtier air for your family to breathe. Really just getting almost over the top with the personalization, because like you said, I was astonished to hear that only 10% of people consider themselves altruistic or would act on altruism. But you're right. Just because you and I care about the polar bears doesn't mean everybody cares about the polar bears.
You gave a very interesting example for the clean air. So what comes to mind is David Suzuki tells this great story of filming one of the episodes of The Nature of Things. So he wanted to see in the city of Toronto what happens when there's smog. And so he said, let's bring the film crew to the hospital, one of the hospitals, and just film as people are coming in because they're having respiratory problems. So he starts filming, and then he realizes, he says, okay, look at all those parents, okay, those adults that are concerned for their children, that they have to bring them to the hospital, or their parents that they have to bring to the hospital. And he would say to the cameraman, zoom in. We want to see those concerned faces because this is real, what's happening. And then he realized, he said, turn the camera. And he saw this whole line of SUVs coming in. Everyone wants the comfort of being in a big vehicle, but these vehicles are emitting at least twice what a small vehicle would emit of these particles that are harming people's breathing right now. So that's just one example. But we're talking about reframing. So let me reframe your question, if you don't mind.
No, go for it.
I'm very audacious.
Do you want to host the show too?
No, not at all. I really opened the door on that one. Okay, so let me reframe. But your example is great. But one thing that came out of research, psychological research on climate change messaging, and this is from my personal experience at the Biosphere as well. If we only focus on impacts or only focus on solutions, it doesn't work. What really works is that 50-50 balance. So in the same messaging, in the same article, in the same news report, we should have 50% of what is to come, what is happening, what are the impacts, and then 50% of what are these accessible solutions that are right in front of us that we could choose. And this has been tested in schools. It's been tested with different test groups when you try messaging. And that's what really works. It gets people engaged and they want to do that. Because what people need right now, referring to what you were saying in the beginning about you're surrounded by people who don't really want to talk about it, is that we don't feel a sense of efficacy. That's what the people have been saying. A sense of agency, of efficacy. We don't feel that even if we engage in solutions, it'll work. We could talk about bad air in the cities and then talk about solutions, like switching to electric vehicles, for example. But if we simply add the benefits to that, hey, did you know that people who have an electric vehicle usually save $1,000 to $2,000 a year? That solution becomes more interesting already. Also, in the Rust Belt, there are lots of coal plants. Historically, that's where most of the coal plants are. So this whole plume of pollution that comes from the Rust Belt also blows into New England. And obviously, we have to retire these coal plants. So the question is, how fast are we going to replace them with clean energy, with renewables? One study showed that if we do it in the next years, if we do it fast enough, we could save 3,000 people per year who suffer from respiratory illnesses. Like, the number's pretty big. And that's just the people who unfortunately die because of bad air. So we're not even counting the whole hundreds of thousands of people who just inconveniently suffer from bad air every day. Yeah, if we're talking about modes of transportation, again, public transit. I'm amazed by the number. The people who live close to big cities who are stuck in traffic and the gas guzzlers are just burning all of that. A person who takes public transit can easily save $9,000 a year. Yeah, by talking about health and wealth, usually it gets people attention. Even the altruistic people will like those numbers.
It's true, especially in a period of inflation and tariffs and economy woes. Just to piggyback off your coal plants example, to my Americans listening, maybe you've heard our president is trying to put those retired coal plants back in service as he simultaneously halts existing and nearly functioning wind farms. So he's prioritizing the polluting, the stuff that worsens our air quality, even though the technology is there for clean energy. I'll just leave that there. But Norm, another point you made was that if we appeal to somebody's pocketbooks and if we lead with actionable solutions 50%, not or incorporate it 50% of the time, that's the special sauce. And yet I just feel as though human beings, or maybe just 2026 Americans, let's say, in general, are just so lazy. We are so primed to choose the convenient and easy option for various reasons. We're overworked, we're underpaid, we're taxed, we're keeping up with the Joneses, we're this, we're that, we're everything, but we're tired and we have been sold convenience. So I think you're an optimist. Just talking to you,
of course.
I feel that from you. What would you say to somebody who says people are lazy, even if you tell them exactly what they need to do? Swap their SUV for a perhaps smaller electric vehicle, get rid of the oil burning, whatever, to heat your home, install the heat pump, compost. You even if it's a small thing, people don't do it. So what's your response to that?
First of all, keeping up with the Joneses, I don't think is very lazy. I think it takes a lot of energy. And you and I are minimalists, so we're like, I don't care if the Joneses have greener grass at the front. But anyways, this leads me to another look at it this way moment in the museum, another anecdote I like to tell. So the same day that it happened, like I was explaining the parks to one person, later on that day, so I give the presentation, meet the people elsewhere in the museum, and a man comes up to me and says, "You spoke about the solar panels on the roof. I've been hearing about that, but I've really been wondering, I don't want to spend so much time shopping for them and then probably installing them or paying for people to install it. It seems like a big deal. And I don't want to do it just because, it's going to reduce greenhouse gases. That's not, I don't have enough motivation for that." So I said, look at it this way. I said, once you have those solar panels up, the sun is providing lots of energy. You shall pay so much less for the energy you're using at home. So already for your wallet, that's a great option. But more than that, sometimes the grid goes down. for whatever reason, the grid goes down and you have no more power at home. Now, thanks to your solar panels and probably a few batteries, you can get some energy. So at night, if you still want to relax watching TV or you need some energy for something else, you'll have it. The fridge, the freezer will still work. You won't lose all of that food because of a power outage. And I don't know about health, but do you have any medicine that you have to store in a cold place? Maybe you have a CPAP, you have to go to bed and you have to have that apparatus to breathe. And then the wife goes, yeah, I have that. Then even if there's a power outage, you still have that. So the solar panels, sure, they're a climate solution, but they're especially a great solution for autonomy, for your own freedom to get energy. And he said, oh, I'm convinced.
That's great.
That's what I needed now to go for solar panels. Yeah. So it's really reframing. Yeah, they're climate solutions, but it's by looking at these benefits that we're really great. And you talked about higher prices. I'm going to jump on this right away. Yes, we're all experimenting higher prices right now, especially the groceries. And this leads me to plant-based meals. Here's how we do this at home. I cook 1 chicken per month. So then that is good for a few meals. Okay, so it's usually big chicken and shared for a few meals, sandwiches and stuff like that. Fish once a week, and the rest is plant-based. It's either tofu or beans, and that's how we eat here, and we're very happy, and we experiment new types of cuisine. And when I go to my in-laws, when I go to the restaurant, I'm going to eat hamburgers and and ribs. And besides, the best meat is always sold to the restaurants first. It's not sold in the groceries. So I get the chance to eat a bit of red meat sometimes, usually to celebrate, because I'd go to the restaurant to celebrate something with some people. But at home, we live this very simple way of eating. It's mostly plant-based. So it's obviously very good for the climate, because red meat, the production of it is, the greenhouse gases, they're huge. So reduce my carbon emissions, but mostly it's better for our health. It reduces risks for colorectal cancer, for type 2 diabetes, stroke, and heart disease. So eating like that helps our health. And eating like that, in our case, it reduces about 30% the cost to do groceries.
Nice.
So switching to plant-based reduces about 30% of the grocery prices. So that's a huge advantage.
Yeah. 30% these days is a huge chunk. But yeah, one thing you didn't say, but I'm going to just assume that you feel this way, assume that you said it, which is that we should all be talking about climate change. Even if it's not something that our circles are talking about, we should be talking about it. And we should follow the formula that you laid out, right? 50% impacts, 50% actionable solutions that are, of course, personalized. So we should all be doing this in our daily life. And I know I'll say for myself personally, Norm, I can stop going all in on the doom and gloom, the impacts portion. I usually do like a 80-20 type of situation.
Well, that's good. That's
good.
But
I'm gonna bring it back. And as I have my conversations in my daily life, it's going to be more 50-50. But I want to leave some time to talk about your new book. It is titled Look at It This Way, Climate Solutions That Will Benefit Your Health and Wealth. Tell us about the book and where we can find it.
Oh, wonderful. Thanks. The book is reversible. And back in December 2024, just before the hot holiday, by the way, my wife looked at me and said, Norm, you're due for a book. So that was just what I needed to hear. I had been thinking about this book and I had just folded a piece of paper and I wrote, look at it this way. And then I wrote impacts, flipped it, wrote, look at it this way, solutions, and the concept for the book was already done. On one side of the book, you get, look at it this way, climate change impacts will harm your health and wealth. And this is already in itself a different approach. Okay. Usually when we hear about impacts, we're talking about there's going to be millions of climate refugees because of places where people can't live anymore because there's no more water. The polar bears are going to disappear. Some faraway islands are going to disappear. And the coral reefs. And so we hear about stuff that's very far away, that's very big, and people don't even think they can contribute anymore. So the impacts presented here are how it affects the health of the people in my family, how it makes things more costly. Every time there's a big storm, it breaks the supply chain. prices go up, and that type of thing. By the way, the biggest example in here that people react to is the fact that coffee is endangered right now because of climate change. It grows in regions where it's getting more humid, and so there's coffee leaf rust that's developing. So in 1 or 2 decades, we might not even be drinking the coffee we're drinking right now. And it's because of climate change. So people go, what? Now I'm concerned. We flip the book, and then we get to climate change solutions will benefit your health and wealth. So rather than simply saying we're in trouble, we need to make sacrifices, in this case, it's more look at if we put these solutions into place, we will be solving climate change. But even more than that, we will have healthier communities. We will stimulate the economy. The number is huge. In the next 50 years, if countries decide to go and solve climate change, we will be stimulating the economy by $43 trillion. The economy is going to be better. If people have electric cars, it's going to cost less. If people have heat pumps, it's going to cost less. These solutions are just so great for all of us. It's not a very thick book. It's about 140 pages. Split that in two. So it's 2 books of 70 pages each. And it's available on Archway. That's the name of the publisher. So Archway, but then you can also get it on Amazon, Goodreads, Barnes & Noble, and so on.
And I've linked to it all in the show notes, listeners. But Norm, I just want to thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you for your enthusiasm, your optimism, for fighting the good fight, and go Boston Bruins.
Go Canadian.
Thank you. Listeners, that's a wrap, my friends. Show notes are at MamaMinimalist.com/590. Now, we have to talk about book club for my book club members. Book club, we are reading Beyond Decluttering, 40 Days to Experiencing Simplicity Through Connection by our very own Suzanne Johnson. She's a member of book club. She's been on the podcast, I think, twice now. So we're reading Suzanne's new book, Beyond Decluttering, and we're reading it in time for our June meeting, June 24th. It's a Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern. I did put the information in the show notes this time. Last week, it slipped my mind, let's say. So June 24th, book club. We're reading Beyond Decluttering. Be there or be square. I'll see you next week. Reach out if you need me, and take care.
If the world were like a Sleep Number mattress, everything would adapt for your comfort. Because as your life changes and your body changes, Sleep Number mattresses adapt and shift to give you personalized comfort night after night. And now everything's on sale during our Memorial Day event. Save up to $1,200 on mattresses, plus free delivery when you add a base. Ends Monday. To experience a whole new world of comfort, visit a Sleep Number store or go to sleepnumber.com. Sleep Number, to a good life sleep.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.